Welcome to Kyrgyzstan.
I'm surprised by all development in this country, really.
You are building a lot of buildings, you are doing a lot of things.
What is the cost of the energy for the building?
I mean, an energy certificate cannot cost a very high amount of money.
Can we say that the energy certificate of building is the health passport of the building?
This tool has to be implemented in correct way.
You're not authorized to build a building which is not enough efficient.
How is achievable?
This must be a task of everybody.
Hello everyone, welcome to UNISON podcast. My name is Nurzat Abdyrasulova. I'm a founder and president of UNISON Group. I'm an energy efficiency expert with 20 years experience. UNISON is the organization working in Central Asia on sustainability topics, including energy efficiency, renewable energies, green finance, and climate change. Today, in this episode, we are going to find out that how the energy efficiency helps keep houses warmer and builds lower and resilient country to energy crisis. Today, we have two guests, our international experts from Italy and Slovakia. Let me introduce you, Jana Bendžalová, and she is the expert on energy efficiency and EU standards with the more than 20 years experience. And we have Laurent Socal, experienced energy engineer with over 40 years in energy audits and building technical systems, right?
Right.
Welcome to Kyrgyzstan. And we are very happy that we can use this opportunity to share your experience about energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is very important for our countries. It's pretty much also connected with the climate change because Kyrgyzstan is dependent from the water resources, and most of the energy in Kyrgyzstan, 90% comes from the hydropower. In that way, we also very interested about saving energy using the inefficient way. According to the UNISON experts' estimation, about 50% of the energy in Kyrgyzstan is used by the buildings, and about 70% is wasted because of the energy efficiency wasn't considered in buildings. But we know the very good experience of the EU that energy efficiency brings a lot of good results, which we would like to also to apply in Kyrgyzstan. But before we go deeper to this topic, I would like to ask Jana, first of all, you, because you are the really interesting role model for us, being a woman and doing the energy efficiency standards, working on buildings. Why you are motivated and how you get into the energy efficiency topic?
So it was from my study at the university because I'm a civil engineer. And from the beginning, I like very much building physics, mathematics. So I started to deal with this topic. And then I met my boss, who was pushing very much this topic, even in the time when in Eastern countries this was not very important. And we worked together from the beginning to persuade the society that this is important. And then we were happy when we joined European Union because it was really pushed at the highest level.
So what is your background now? What kind of work are you doing?
So I am a civil engineer researcher working since from the beginning of energy performance of building directive implementations. This is European directive which deals with energy performance of buildings. And I was working in several countries on international projects and also in Kyrgyzstan and Ukraine, Moldova. So
Yes. Thank you so much, Jana. I know that you have a really very rich background and very well understanding of our countries. I mean that former Soviet Union countries. We have worked on that a lot. And Laurent, the question to you. So why is your interest of energy efficiency? Can you tell us also about your background and how, as an engineer, you are interested on the technical systems?
Okay. First, let me know. Thank you for visiting Kyrgyzstan, a very nice country, and now developing fast. And maybe we can say something also about the importance of dealing with energy efficiency now. Well, my background, it's an heritage because my father already worked in this sector, industrial burners. So a burner is something which has to do with energy because we use fuel to produce energy, heat for the process. So since the very beginning, I worked in this sector as an installer, and I began when it was the start of when we started to worry about energy performance and also emission. It's something that goes along in our country and in general in Western countries. So it means the years 80s, 90s. It was the first time when we had a concern about the energy performance. And of course, since it's a main concern, now it's one of my main concerns, guaranteeing energy efficiency.
Yeah, it's really very interesting what you mentioned, like that Italy, like as a Western Europe, started thinking about energy efficiency already in 80s, right? And this is also, I think, that showing that how much experience already probably European Union and Western countries already collected, where we can learn as an example. Let's example for our countries on the applying the different approaches and technologies. So when we are talking on energy efficiency, we know that in European level, it's really very highly regulated. I mean that on the level of the European directives. So I know that there is a European directive on energy performance of buildings, which also the principles of has been applied in Kyrgyzstan. And then main instrument is energy certification, right, of the buildings. So my question is that, Jana, what is the energy certification of buildings and why it is actually can we say that the energy certificate of building is the health passport of the building?
Yes, it is some passport, some ID of building from the point of view of energy performance, and it is a useful tool to show, to present these properties of building to wider public, to owner, to tenants, and this is also tool to give subsidies to right building to ensure that it is used in the proper way. And I think that this tool has to be implemented in correct way so that we really show what happens in building.
And if we talk about this EPBD directive, how it's implemented, for example, in Slovakia, how this energy certificates of buildings are on demand, I would say, from the market side.
So it has to be implemented in similar way in all member states. So Slovakia is one of well implemented countries, well way of implementing because we have it quite detailed, and there is interest between people is not so high, but there is obligation based on directive and national regulation to have it for new constructed building, for buildings which are after renovation, and then for sold or rented buildings. So it is something that has to be done, but also becomes more and more important, I think, mostly by energy prices increase. It starts to be also in the interest of people, but this is a bit slow increase.
Laurent, what you can add from your side for energy certification? How many of them already done in Italy?
Yes, in Italy, it's common practice for existing building as every time you rent or sell a building. So we have millions of certificates which have already been produced. What I can add is that if you want that the energy efficiency is pursued effectively, this must be a task of everybody. So not only of designers, of regulators, but also of ordinary people. We are in the economy. It's a free market. In this case, if you want that this is pursued, you must make energy efficiency part of the market. And I think this is one of the roles of the energy certificate. When you make the decision to rent a building or to buy a building, you should not only consider, is this a nice tile? Is this well painted? You should also think about the fact that, okay, I pay now the building, but then I will have to pay the bills after that. So you must give this a value so that people can make the right request to the producers and they address the market towards efficiency. So the disclosure tool, energy performance certificate, I think, is a very important market tool. Of course, it has to be reliable and credible.
Yes.
And that's the point which is very important. And of course, in Europe, we did a lot of things, and we know also that there are some risks. So we have to try to avoid these risks and make this a useful and credible certificate document.
Yeah.
For this
So
purpose.
both of you actually referred that about credibility, quality of the things which certificates which we discussed before the podcast as well. And I'm because I think it's really very important that information is reliable, trustable. People can really use as a tool for energy efficiency and energy saving. And when we are talking of your experience in EU, what you would emphasize important for implementation of energy certification, Jana?
I think most important is to persuade people that it is useful. Because the quality depends on if people really want to know the properties of building, or is they think that it is just to show to public authority to comply with the regulations that you must have it. So this is very important, and I think it becomes more and more important by energy prices and by also interest in improved indoor air quality, because this connected energy performance also with indoor environment of building. So I think we are on the good way, but at the beginning it was really challenging to persuade people that it is not just loss of money.
Yes, and in our countries, for example, is in Kyrgyzstan, energy certification we just started to implement, and it's quite a new tool for the market. So, but we have a lot of also there maybe some confusion with the energy audits. So, what would be the difference between the energy audits and energy certification, Lauren? If you can clarify that.
Well, the difference, the energy performance certificate is an instrument, a disclosure tool, first of all, which is intended for just the buildings and just for the use of energy for comfort purpose. So if you want to evaluate a building, you assume standard use of the building. So you assume that you heat at 20 degrees, that you want a certain amount of domestic hot water, which has to be the same because you want an objective evaluation of the building, not to take into account the user influence, because otherwise you just close your system and you spend no energy, but that's not what we want. So you have to provide this evaluation. And then you have also recommendations, because one point important, energy performance certificate is not only for new buildings, it shall be also for existing buildings, because this is also one of the most important concerns at least for Western Europe. Our problem is mostly that all buildings are consuming a lot of energy, and you don't deeply renovate a building every year. It takes a long time. And that's a little bit different from the situation in Kyrgyzstan, maybe. So the energy audit is something which is intended, is a general purpose tool. So it's not just for the buildings, it's mainly for the industry, for the transports. And here a first difference is that it can be anything. So you cannot have something standard as an evaluation. So the evaluation will be done specifically and for the specific operating condition of any production process, any transport means. And then the last difference, it is also focused on the recommendations. It's not just the aim is not really evaluating the process because it has a value, because you want to sell it, to rent it. It's just because you want to improve it. So there is a lot more focus on what I can do to implement it. And this is a real value of an energy audit, if it provides wise recommendations for your process. And you have more, and of course, since it is a specific tool, you are in an environment which has also more resources for the individual operation. I mean, an energy certificate cannot cost a very high amount of money. So you have to balance between accuracy and, of course, the cost of this procedure, because this is for everybody. Whilst an audit is intended for the industry, and then you can expect a lot more effort.
Okay, so then if we summarize that this understanding that energy certification applies to the buildings, and it's it's not expensive, but it also gives the very good, transparent understanding of what is the cost of the energy for the building, right? Like we said, like it's a kind of the ID of the building. And for energy audit, it's more like for the industries, for the processes, for the transport, and etc. So when then from European Union, so how energy audit and energy certification, you are taking the like separate approaches, right? So what is the like most maybe used tool? Because I understand that this is this anyway that separate approaches, and then why European Union decided that not to apply that for buildings, for example, certification. And then energy audits only comes also on the very big regulation level as a European directive on energy audits. If you can tell us also about this directive and like how it applies to the member states.
Yes, because energy efficiency, as you mentioned, for Kyrgyzstan, it's half the energy used for a comfort purpose in the buildings, but there is still another half, which is used by the industry, by transport, and other activities. In Europe, is around roughly 1/3 is comfort for buildings, 1/3 is industry, 1/3 is transports, more or less. Maybe it could be 30-40, but it doesn't matter. So we have a number of directives. We have 4 main directives about energy efficiency. So one specific for buildings for 1/3. We have one specific for the industry and transport, Energy Efficiency Directive, which is mainly aimed there, and which uses the audit as its main tool, or something which is more than an audit, which is a repeated audit every year, so to say it simply. So not just look once, but continuously improve your process, your industrial process, from the energy efficiency point of view. And then also, you have to remember there is a third directive, which is about products. Europe is a free market, but we don't want bad products on our market. So that's why, if you want to sell a product in Europe, you have to make who sells the product, who puts the product on the market, has to guarantee that this product is safe and it doesn't harm. And lastly, we are now asking also that it is efficient. It's not enough, because the efficiency of the product in the real life will depend also on how it is used. But the first step is ban an inefficient product. And this is something similar of what you have in your MEPS, if I'm not mistaken, where you are starting to ask a minimum energy performance also to products. So we have several directives, and overall, and of course, the fourth one was about the use of renewable energy, because of course, first you reduce, you make your process more efficient, and when a small amount of energy is still required, then you can use renewable energy or carbon-free energy to fulfill your task.
Thank you, Laurent. And when we are starting to talking about the minimum energy requirements, this is one of the main characteristics of the energy certificates of the buildings, Jana, right? So, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, minimum energy requirements for buildings is a class B. And we take also the similar classification like in Europe, 7 classes of energy efficiency. And what is the minimum energy requirements? So how it's applied, if you can also share this.
So an energy performance certificate has content which is prescribed by directives. So one of important feature is the scale. And this scale can be related to a minimum energy performance requirements. In Kyrgyzstan, it is class B, but in Europe now it is mostly class A, because we have minimum requirement nearly zero energy building, which is usually in position of energy class A or even class A plus or A0. And this is also important to see owner how far he is from minimum energy performance requirements. And what is also important in Europe, we have to estimate these minimum energy performance requirements based on cost optimality. So this should give a picture to owner what to do to really save energy costs, which is mostly the main interest. And important part of certificate is also recommendation for improvement of energy performance of building, and it should be to the level of this cost optimal energy performance.
And this cost optimal energy performance is calculated by probably on the expert level. Does it somehow also discussed with the market players? And then does it also indicate that payback level of these measures, and what this exactly means, like cost optimal minimum energy requirements?
So this is also regulated in Europe as many things, perhaps too much, but okay. Usually it is useful, and this is very useful aspect of directives that member states have to calculate this level of minimum energy performance requirements. So this level should not be set just by guess by some expert without calculating. And it is, in fact, it is calculation for a long time, for 20 or 30 years of energy costs and investment costs. So sometimes if you invest zero, you have so high yearly energy costs that at the end your global cost during 20 years or 30 years is very high. And if you invest a lot and then you count yearly energy costs which are very low, so at the end you are on much lower costs during this lifespan of building 20 or 30 years. So this is very important to not look only on the first investment, which can be very high, but really on the operation of building.
So, Laurent, how is it in Italy? I'm just wondering that because it's like Western already Europe, and energy prices are also really now getting high because of all this situation. But I'm just wondering that if this cost optimal minimum energy requirement is established on the state level, but also probably it's very different from building type, from the province, depending from the maintenance, right? So if you can also lighten it more.
Okay. Just one step back to have an information. So we are in what is always in the background of the European directive is that we are in a market context. So the energy efficiency depends on how a product is realized, constructed. To have an efficient product, it's a higher cost, or let's say better. There is some extra cost. This is a reality. It's not really very much expensive, but you need some extra cost to get the best possible energy efficiency. Now we are on the market. Who has to sell the product wants a cheap product because he has to offer at the lowest possible price. So providing efficiency raises the price a little bit. So he's not very motivated to do this because then it is the user who buys the product that will then pay for the entire lifetime of the product the cost of the extra energy. So you have to put these things together because it's also always very important that responsibilities, duties, and things are connected together correctly. So that's why you need some kind of disclosure tool. And then you can adjust this, for example, by saying, no, you're not authorized to build a building which is not enough efficient. Now, where you put the limit, it's very important because you must put a limit which is high enough to guarantee that you will have a useful result, but not too high. Because in a market context, if you ask too much, then it will be not productive. It's not productive to ask too much. And then the cost of the, because it's always a 20-80 law. 20% of the effort makes 80% of the result.
Yes.
So asking for the extra 20 final would be too much impacting. So you have to find the right level so that people can feel that this requirement makes sense. So you build trust into the regulation, because if the regulation asks too less, you lose an opportunity. And people are not satisfied, and then they have the consequences for a long time. If you ask too much, they will complain, oh, that's impossible, it's too expensive, we can't afford that, which is an issue in the market. So the cost optimal level is really important when setting the regulatory level. So that's very, very important. You set, because of course the market is very powerful, but you have a little bit to regulate it, because otherwise it goes into some direction that could be not very happy or very useful.
Yes, yes, and this is also very much important on the economic point of view, like you said. But you mentioned also, Jana, about the nearly zero energy buildings, right? Because you are not in Europe only talking about the already AA plus buildings, but you want the buildings also make it almost near zero energy. How is achievable actually? Because we were talking how to persuade people to make a minimum energy requirement, but in nearly zero, it sounds like even more ambitious.
Nearly zero energy buildings is one target of Europe, but we will go further in the next years because we have already to define zero emission buildings. So nearly zero energy buildings should be building which requires very low amount of energy. So it means that it should be firstly very well insulated, change windows, and only after requiring very low amount of energy, then we should this low amount supply by renewable sources to as much as possible. So member states had to set this requirement, and they also recalculated some building to see if it will be achievable or not. So it is, I think, good way to show that it is feasible, and now it is really minimum requirement in Europe from 1st of January 2021. Every new building should be nearly zero energy building.
So it's also about the self-sufficiency of the building from energy point of view, right? Because it's first comes the energy efficiency, like applying all the energy efficiency measures, insulating the walls, putting the good windows and making the building really little. I mean that with the limited loss of the energy, and then adding there some renewable energies. So which is I believe also completely achievable in the current conditions, because of the construction sector is so much developing. There are so many already good solutions. And when we're talking about such a good technical systems, Lauren, what you would say that is the good to do for the building, from the insulation, from the technical systems, from the renewable energies applications?
Well, first concept, to achieve energy performance, you need a good building and a good system. And after you did this, you can afford and complete this by using renewable to supply energy as much as possible. And the two things are connected. I mean, of course, when it comes to the building envelope, yes, it's a question about insulating, but not only. Because if you want a good energy performance in winter, it's also useful that you use as far as possible your heat gains. And on the other side, you have to prevent heat gains, so the sun heating your building, in fact, during the summer, because in that case, it is a problem. So you need shading, for example. But Jana could say a lot more about this. And you have a little bit different requirements in the summertime and the winter time from the building envelope point of view. And this is a little bit specific to Kyrgyzstan, for example. As far as I understood, you have really a big difference between a summer and winter, so it makes it even more a little bit challenging for the envelope.
Yeah, it's
Then,
true.
sorry.
Yes, continue, please.
Sorry. And then, for example, now, to provide energy to the building, of course, for heating, you have two main technologies at the end of the day. You might either provide heat by combustion, so a boiler,
Yep.
or by a heat pump. The same device that you would use for cooling. But there is a difference. The boiler is a technology which is very well settled, very well known. You have condensing boilers. There's no reason not to use a condensing boiler. So it's a really, I would say now, cheap and effective product. The next step would be using the heat pump also in the context of heating. But be careful, because a heat pump is an efficient machine, but this performance is very much dependent on the operating conditions. And one of the first things that you need is an insulated building. So either a new building, in a new building you may use a heat pump for heating. If it is an existing building, you have first to insulate this building to reduce the requirement of power, because of course, if you just think that you will input a lot of power, then you need a lot of electricity. And the other thing is that, of course, this reduces also, if you insulate the building, you need a smaller system. So you spend a little bit in the insulation of the building, but then your system will be smaller, and so it will be cheaper. So pursuing energy efficiency is really a work of looking at all the details to optimize every piece of your building and of your systems. And this requires a little bit of expertise that has to be accumulated. Because for heat pumps, we know, we have experience in Europe that countries started with heat pump without thinking about the requirements, and it was an issue at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's, I think, a very good point, that there is always, when we are applying the technology, there should be a good understanding what we can expect and how we can actually maintain and operate on that. And you also mentioned that it's not insulation is the first thing where we start, because this is actually the to define that how much energy we need for the building or per square meter, for example. And in Kyrgyzstan condition, we have a continental climate, so we have a harsh winter peaks, and then we have also the very hot summer peaks because of the also heat waves. Climate is changing, it's affecting also our country, and except the heating, the conditioning of the buildings is becoming also the very important issue in Kyrgyzstan, because in some years ago, Kyrgyzstan used to be that having the surplus energy during the summertime, which we could actually that we were intending to export it. But now it seems that the domestic consumption in summer is also increasing. And that will be also the bringing the energy efficiency topic. How we can keep the houses or buildings not only warm in the winter, but also cool in the summer, right? For the most pleasant microclimate of the building. And from this point of view, you also mentioned that very importance of the shading, right? So Jana, if you can also talk about the shading as an important characteristic of the building and what we can do on that.
So it's not only shading, but really the whole geometry of building has to be carefully planned because it makes a lot of influence on your energy consumption. And of course, shading is one of important tools to avoid overheating in the summer, but it should be designed in such ways that it allows to keep and to collect sun during the winter. So there are solutions which really can adapt, and also orientation, because the sun is on other position during winter than during summer. So it's very important and very huge part of energy during winter in high performing buildings. So if building is well insulated, the solar gains are important factor to save energy. So especially in your country where you have very strong winters, you need to propose solutions such that so there are many devices which can be movable, so you can change them. They operate in different ways in winter and in the summer. So this is very important that it is not something fixed that prohibit to collect solar gains during winter time.
So it's, I think, brings us about the behavior, right, on the energy consumption. Is there also impact of the people's behaviors for the energy efficiency, Laurent? Because I know that there has been a lot of studies about the behavioral change.
If I may just complement the first question, because this movable shadings is one of the things about the building envelope to cope with the summer issue, because we have the summer issue. And in fact, in Italy, it's a long time we have shadings on the windows that people just drop down or take up when needed.
Like
so manual. It has to be external shadings, because internal is too late. The sun is already in your house. But for example, this is from the building point of view, but from the system point of view, photovoltaic and cooling, it's okay, because you have the sun, and at the same moment you have the need of energy for cooling. So a good contribution could come from the PV for the cooling problem. Whilst in winter, of course, it doesn't help so much, because you have very little photovoltaic power available. But then in winter, you can insulate and you resolve the problem of heating, because you can reduce the heat demand because you are insulating the building. This is not possible for cooling. You have also another point, because if you insulate the building, you will not reduce your cooling demand, because you prevent even the heat to go out of your building in the night, because in the night you have a high excursion between day and night. So you can also, of course, during the heat waves, this is not true, but in the middle season, this helps. Okay, so you have a possible solution also from the energy point of view, cooling with PV. When it comes to the behavior, there is one European directive that makes it compulsory if you have a centralized heating system or cooling system or domestic hot water system, that you measure the amount of energy, you put a meter or a heat cost allocator of what is consumed by each tenant, so that everybody has to pay according to how much it's consumed. And this is a general rule. of course, user behavior has an impact. If you want that user behave correctly, you must give them not only the authority to decide how much to consume, you must give them also the responsibility to pay for this consumption. Because otherwise, if you just have a centralized system which is always running, of course, if it is too hot inside the house in winter, you just open the window. If you are paying for that, probably you will think about and turn down your thermostat. So you need some kind of motivation. Maybe you can this is maybe the rude aspect, but generally speaking, you should first raise awareness. If you want people be careful about energy, you have to explain everybody what energy is. And this, for example, is very important in energy audits. We also have behavioral recommendation about the behavior. And you must design systems, design controls, design things so that the user can understand the use of energy. Otherwise, of course, if people do not know, they don't care. That's normal. Yes. And I think this is also a very important point. Energy efficiency is a culture, and it involves everybody. Even in a factory, when you do an energy audit, it's not only the question of the top management being to agree that they have to invest on energy efficiency because they have a return. It's only a question of training every single operator who pushes a button and makes, provokes an energy use at the end of the day. So you have to target everybody, both the top manager and who is really pushing the button and or turning the thermostat or opening the domestic hot water tap.
Yes, and this is the very good point, Laurent, because I would very much agree that energy efficiency is the culture. It's and then we can get this culture only when everybody understands and they support, and that's how we actually coming to the persuasion of energy certification of buildings or energy audits and energy efficiency in generally as a policy, as a approach, as a culture. But when you are talking about the top managers to being understand and also maintenance, I know that in Europe there is also the ISO standards, right? So ISO 51000. So how ISO 51000 actually help to industries, to the organizations, and why in like introducing the standards is important. If you can both of you share your opinion about it, because I know that you are very much involved on the EU level on the CN standards, right? So what actually the like good part of the standardization?
Okay. Of course, EN ISO 50000, so the standard about energy management, is of course a very good standard. First, I have to say something. It's important to have standards, but standards cannot replace expertise. So it is very important that you develop a culture of energy efficiency. And then the standard is helpful for the experts. So the purpose of standard is to help an expert. Just think about a pilot of a plane. He is following tons of procedures. Everything he does, he has to note. And one could ask, but can he fly a plane? Yes, of course, he can fly a plane. But if you want efficiency, safety, even the expert shall not forget anything. Otherwise, it's a disaster. So the role of the standard is to help the expert. So you need both.
Pilot and standard.
Sorry?
Pilot and standard.
Yeah, you need the pilot and the procedure, of course.
And procedures,
but no, the procedure without the standard might be dangerous.
Yes.
And the standard without the pilot, so somebody just jumping into the cockpit and just reading the manual and trying to fly the plane, it will be an immediate disaster.
Yeah.
So just to clarify the role of the standard. Then you need a good standard. What's the energy audit about? Maybe in a couple of words we can define. It's simply first understanding why you're using energy. So the first question is not using energy. We have to use energy efficiently. You have to use it for something. We want the comfort. You cannot say you don't want the comfort. You need the comfort, but do it. Get a lot of comfort with low energy. Second step: once you understood why you're using energy, then find out a solution to use less energy to get the same. And you have to figure out this in the audit in a cost-effective way, because we are in a market environment. So you have to save energy, but you have to save also money. And that's a difficult point, because energy is usually cheap. And that's why our society works. But nevertheless, go on. And then, of course, you have to implement the recommendation. So the limit of the audit is that you provide the recommendation, but this is the end of the story of an audit. Then it's up to the industry to really do what is recommended in the audit. Just like your EPC, you have recommendations, but it's up to the owner to decide, yes, I will implement this recommendation. The energy management solves these things because it's a continuous analysis of of how much energy you are consuming. You are managing energy, so you must be aware that you are using that much for that purpose. And every year, you figure out how you could save doing the same thing. You have to implement. It's part of the energy management, implementing the recommendation or the improvement measures that you find out, to verify them, and then verify if your management system is effective, and you improve. Because another rule is that quality is not perfection, it is continuous improvement to satisfaction of your customer. So it's normal that when you start, it's not perfect. The important thing is continuously improving. And at the end of the day, probably you will be satisfied.
Yes, just not being afraid to start. Because on the beginning, it's not about the perfection, it's about doing the process.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The first 80% with 20% first effort.
So about the standards, which are related directly to energy performance of buildings, as you mentioned, they are also referenced in European directive. So the main aim is to harmonize between 28 member states, or 27 now, the calculation methodology in some way. So it means that it gives you some procedures that can be followed. But of course, standards are not, I have to say that ISO standards, which you mentioned, are international standards, which apply also out of Europe, but they are the same as European standards. And what is very important is that standards are not obligatory for experts, neither for member states, but they are very useful because I was working also for Kurt as a forensic expert. And when there was some problem in building, which went to the Kurt, and we had to decide who is in charge of the responsibility. So the first was that we look if expert or designer followed standards, and if yes, he is always on the safe side. So this is one aspect, and the second aspect is that we really hope for harmonization of calculation in Europe, because now it is quite fragmented. Laurent perhaps can say more about the different approaches in member states, but now by new directive, I think it will go to more harmonization.
I think it's the harmonization, and then like standard is also very important for the investor's point of view, right? Because when the developers are working on the building construction, what is the important for them to understand why they should be there? Like, we understand, of course, that energy efficiency also it's about the economics, because of the prices are growing, and then we would like to understand that in 30 years building can actually afford all these prices. So why the standard and harmonization could be the good for the developers from the like building owners point of view. And then also, if you, Laurent, can address that your opinion about that you said that expertise is so important, right? And we understand that even there is a certain understanding of the like acceptance from the building owners, there is not expertise. How we can actually bring this expertise and building owners' interest together?
Well, expertise and building owner are not in conflict, because when I speak about expertise, I mean expertise of designers, installers, and also people working around a building and around energy efficiency. And of course, if they are not expert, they make mistakes. So it's a danger for the owner if your provider is not an expert.
But
You-
during our conference
Yes.
yesterday and previous day, some of our design institutes, they have been saying that there is also like low understanding of the building owners, for example, developers, right? They are like more pushing for the maybe solutions which is not that much costly, because energy efficiency anyway makes some cost higher. And then also if they put for example, more advanced technology, which is could be expensive, they are not accepted. So from this point of view, what is could be the solution? Because proficiency is maybe there, but acceptance is not.
I think we are back again to the first question of cost optimality and of the adequate level of minimum requirement, which has to make sense, because this is and first you have to of course first you have to set the regulatory level at the right point, and which has to be credible, and then you have to verify that really this is done. And in this way, you can ensure that the market will go in this direction. Because if then the building industry knows that if they don't comply, then it's an issue, it's a problem, it's a fine or paying something, a damage to the owner because you don't get the right performance. So this leads me to two remarks. The first, if you want to set a level so that you have a guarantee for the owner, you need a tool to measure this level. So in this case, the standard, the calculation standard, that is a standard calculation method, is essential, because you need a unique value where you need a meter for this value. And the standard is the meter to measure the energy performance. The second thing, this is maybe one of the, let's say, lessons learned in Europe. It must not stay on the paper. An energy certificate, you should, of course, the user, the tenant, he only sees the last letter, A, B, C, D. But for example, for the professionals, there are a lot more information in the calculation that leads to this point. And the energy use which is calculated should be representative and meaningful. And there are means to compare what is calculated and what is actually consumed. It's not an easy task. You need procedures, you need some kind of know-how, but not that difficult. Personally, I was responsible for a working group which was operational rating of building. That is, measuring which is the performance of your building during operation. So one thing which is very, very important is that you verify what is done. So, and of course, you have a first step, which is formal verification of the calculation of a certificate. But sometimes you should introduce a culture. They told me that this should be the class of my building. Is my bill consistent with this classification, or is there something wrong? And this is also something which is very, very important, the feedback. I mean, the reaction to this. And this takes time, and probably for the experts, it is the expertise. For the ordinary people, it is the, let's say, awareness. If they promise me something, then you have to, I have to verify. I don't just have to believe this blindly. To make a parallel, acoustics, noise. This has brought tremendous issues in Europe, because there is an easy instrument to measure noise. So since we have regulation about noise, if you feel this is noisy because when your neighbor is speaking, you hear him, and the neighbor on top of you is walking, you hear him. You can measure, and if it's above the limit, the constructor has to pay because you have a measurement instrument. But you have to close the loop. You need a measurement instrument, you need a limit, and you need to check after that if this is really. So you must explain people a little bit how to do this. And this was a mistake at the beginning in Europe, at least in my country, in Italy. There was even somebody saying, what is calculated in the energy certificate has nothing to do with what is really consumed. No, this is not right, because otherwise, why are you calculating this? No, especially for heating and domestic hot water, the calculation should provide realistic results. And there are ways to display this in a way which is understandable by the owner.
Yes, thank you so much, Laurent, for this extensive explanation. And measurements and calculation methodology is really a core thing in order to come that we are in the correct way in the values. And also we have a tool to monitor the final results. And regarding that, the energy certification of Kyrgyzstan, for example, it's in place, and all the new buildings now should follow the minimum energy requirements class B. And we have also as an example of the European Union, we have accredited experts who is doing the energy certification of buildings in Kyrgyzstan. So when we come into the methodology, right, because this is the calculation, you both helped us now to improve this methodology and to prepare this unified calculation tool on the base of Excel. This has been done quite a while ago together with Jana, with the Institute TASUS of Slovakia. And now, after some years, I'm very happy that we continue this work in order to update this tool. So what is the, why this tool now, it's, what this tool now change? So what is it make it more easier, the work of the certificators? Is it also helps them to make the less mistake? What you would suggest? Because Kyrgyzstan is the one of the advancing country to introducing and applying the energy certification in Central Asia. So what do you think that our neighbors also can maybe learn from our experience?
Okay, so yes, we made an effort in improving the tool. A good part, I think half of the effort at least, was to make the tool more practical, especially so that you don't have to copy values from one part to another, so avoiding mistakes. Also, one thing which has progressed, but which is still difficult and has to be completed, for example, is the technical system part. Because, of course, technical systems are very various. The building envelope is something which is standardized since a long time. So I think there is a good calculation of the building envelope. But, of course, for the systems, there's still work to be done to have something which is really... there is still space. We are improving. Maybe a further extension could be also the extension for the cooling, for example, because now there's not cooling. And another thing which is also meaningful, also for the quality of indoor air, is having ventilation systems, mechanical ventilation. Of course, these are things that you can do in progressing the problem.
Yes, so there is a lot of things still go, and we are, I think, that in a very good way, also using the very much European experience. And then also I'd like to ask now Jana, because Jana, you have been from the beginning working with UNISON together on the starting from the developing of the primary law and developing a whole ecosystem of the energy certification in Kyrgyzstan. And so now coming back after some years to Kyrgyzstan, what do you see the change? And do you think that there is a good future and development for energy certification?
Yes, I'm surprised by all development in this country. Really big difference since several years. I was here for the last time, and I think that you have good experts. They are very much interested in this topic, as we could see in conferences we had last days, and these experts are really most important particle in all this process, because this certification has to be well calculated. It must be based on knowledge of materials, buildings, because must be based on inspection to really reflect the properties of buildings. And I see a huge development and future, positive future, because you are, I must say that you are on the good way, because it's not so obvious that a country which is not obliged to do it as European member states, you are really on the track to follow all these European energy performance of building directives, because we have them more already. We have now new energy performance of directive, and all member states have to implement these new features, and you can follow this process and continue as until now, I think.
Yes, this is, I think, the good thing, that we can just take a lot of lessons learned from your countries. And what is your observation, Laurent, for like construction sector, for the what is going on in Kyrgyzstan? Is like because I think that you already said that there is millions of the energy certificates now in the country, right? So like maybe also if you can summarize your general recommendations and observation.
So my general recommendation, observation, is that of course you are a country which is renovating now most of its building stock. So you are really, if I look here, it is really everywhere a work site. You are constructing, renovating. Okay. I think my recommendation, it's tremendously important that you take care of energy performance now, as soon as possible. Because once you build a building, it's there for decades before you can again improve it.
Yes.
You will not dismantle a building in 2 years because it was not optimal. So you are really in a critical phase where it's nice, you are developing, but you have also to put some attention to these aspects. It's not. It's just a suggestion,
Yes.
and I hope a useful information. And this requires a certain amount, of course, of expertise. And remember, it's not only a question of regulation. So one of my suggestions could be, for example, as much as possible, encourage designers, installers to educate themselves, to participate to training. And personally, I'm working in the installation. Originally, I was an installer. I'm still an installer as well as a designer. And I can ensure that it's nothing better than seeing a system that you built and works properly as you designed. I think that's satisfactory, and it's a nice job. And
Thank you, Laurent. I think that is very important point, what you emphasized about that take care about energy efficiency now. And it's exactly, it's I think that your observation is right, that we are having a lot of construction. So it's like 38% of the GDP in Kyrgyzstan is on the construction side, and it's also connected pretty much about the new energy new building renovation plan of the government. So I completely also agree that it should be done in a complex way, because if we can have a very good results only when they come all together, designers, suppliers, installers, and then also their standards and policy, right? And when we are talking about what can be done and what about the policy, one of the recommendations of our conference was the very much importance of the institutional strengthening of this sector, that we need really specific attention, and maybe even by establishing the separate agency or dealing with energy efficiency, and then even also providing the access to finance by building the energy efficiency fund, which is actually already mentioned in the law of energy saving. And I hope that that will be one of the essential things which will be heard by our stakeholders, and also on the policy level. And we very much enjoyed having you both in Kyrgyzstan. And by the end of this podcast, I would like to give you the free microphone if you want to say something to our audience, and your maybe impression or like suggestion or any words about our to UNISON or the Kyrgyzstan, please.
So, as I say already, just continue in your really useful and good way. And also, I appreciate the contribution by UNISON, who really push things to political, and also not only political level, but also trains experts and take care about the publicity to this topic. So you have to increase general awareness about this topic, and of course also push politically, but the first is that people really are interested in this.
Thank you.
It's difficult to add something to what Jana added. I could only add that it's the first time I come to Kyrgyzstan. It's a nice country. Keep it. Because it's really a nice country. You can still hear the birds singing in the city because you have a lot of trees, for example. And you are, of course, just as I said, you are building a lot of buildings, you are doing a lot of things, and you have to think about also energy efficiency, because otherwise it will be a potential surprise later. And this means, as you said, working together. And also a final word about a lesson learned in Western Europe. For example, we don't have a very good communication in Italy between installers and designers. No, everybody has to speak the same language and work in the same direction. Because the designer sees something, the installer sees something, the tenant, the owner, sees something, and if they all together understand each other, then it is successful. And this means culture, as we said.
Yes, and this means also about the uniting for the better future, because we want to really keep this country in this nice way, right? So I think that our discussion was pretty much useful for our listeners, and this is our first experience when we are like issuing the UNISON podcast, and I thought that it's a really great opportunity using this time when you are in Kyrgyzstan, so we can also share this experience on the bigger audience. We will be sharing it in our YouTube channels, and I hope that there will be a lot of also good feedback and we also hope that our fruitful cooperation will be continuing. You will visit many more times Kyrgyzstan, and after some years, you can already say that okay, because of the EPC in Kyrgyzstan so well developed, this is their like best example, and now we have a lot of good new buildings, because energy efficiency is not only about saving energy, but it's also about the energy independence. This is a very high level topic, which can actually help country to address the energy crisis, which we are feeling already because of the water scarcity. And it's also about the climate change, right? It's about the emissions, greenhouse emissions. We hope that energy efficiency will be taken very, very seriously, and it's not a topic of only the engineers, suppliers, or installers, but it's also the concern of I think that energy users, each of us can do something on our own level, right? So it's also about that how we use energy, how we save energy, and this culture actually starts on our own personal level as well. So I would suggest that each of us become very responsible on our energy use. For example, in house level, we can, for example, start with energy saving bulbs, switching off, buying the energy efficient equipment, insulating your house, and talking a lot to your friends, relatives, and saying that why it's important also to check if the building which we are going to rent or buy has an energy certificate, and at least on the class B. Thank you for being with us, and I hope to see you next time. Today's episode has been supported by the IKI, International Initiative for Climate, implemented by the GIZ and UNISON. And this is the project supporting in Kyrgyzstan about the making quality energy consultancy and energy certification available in all countryside.